War is a universal language. I know a renegade soldier when I see one. Never occurred to me that one might come from above. Space invasion, big car chase. Truth be told, I was ready to hang it up until I met you today. So you're not from around here?
It's hard to explain. I keep having these memories. I see flashes. I think I had a life here. But I can't tell if it's real.
We have no idea what threats are out there. We can't do this alone. We need you.
I'm not what you think I am.
Booyah! That's right. She was not what you thought she was. She would be Captain Marvel. The last step, the last movie before Avengers Endgame. And today we're here to talk about that film. Hello, everyone. I am Elliot Serrano, Chicago's King of Geeks, and one of the MCU ReVU crew. If you've been joining us here on the MCU ReVU channel, where we talk about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, starting all the way with Iron Man, and we're soon going to be finishing Phase 4 of the MCU, what many have now called, we now call the Infinity Saga. And it's going to get really emotional here, folks. It's going to get really emotional. But to do that, of course, we have our MCU ReVU crew and a special guest who I am so excited. I have been wanting to have her on the show since we first talked about the MCU ReVU starting off. But let's go through our introductions. First off, he is the founder and proprietor and the regular host of Caffeinated Comics, John Clark. How you doing, John?
All right. Now, if you don't like this film, are you an ally?
Okay, really? Now you're starting on
That's what we're here to find out, I think.
That's what we're here. Okay. All right. We're setting tone already. Okay.
No tone.
No tone. There will be no tone. But how you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
How's the move coming along?
Pretty good. We still have a dining room couch, but we no longer have roots in our toilet.
Okay. I don't want to go into that. I don't want to delve into that.
That's the name of my autobiography, Roots in Our Toilet.
Roots in the Toilet. So if you've been listening to both the Top Men and Indiana Jones podcast, as well as a previous episode of the MCU ReVU, as well as regular episodes of Caffeinated Comics, you have been privy to the moving saga, also an Infinity.
Yeah, I'm in phase 4 of the moving saga. I think my problem was I fired Edgar Wright as my mover. That was.
Well, I was going to say, are you out of your dark phase now? Because it was pretty dark with you last time.
When I suggest a Batman podcast, we'll know we're in our dark phase.
All right. Just do not suggest Black Adam again. All right.
It's not my suggestion. That was Warner Brothers.
All right. Now, next up, he is my co-host on the show that pretty much inspired the MCU ReVU, Shaken Not Heard, a James Bond fan cast, where we talked about all the James Bond movies, starting with Dr. No all the way to No Time to Die. He's my compatriot, my buddy, my ride and die, Dave Pino. How you doing, Dave?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. This is going to be an interesting one, if you ask me. I have a feeling this one might be even more. Let's say I'll keep with the word interesting, even more interesting than how our discussion about Temple of Doom went last week, which, by the way, is now live on the Radio Misfits Podcast Network. So if you missed the live stream, of course, you can watch the Top Men Indiana Jones podcast here on the MCU ReVU Facebook page and YouTube page.
I thought you were going to say Temple of Doom, which retroactively stars an Academy Award winner.
Also, yes, we posted the audio version in celebration of Ke Huy Quan winning that Academy Award. So yes, thanks for bringing that up. Also, thank you, Lehman, for joining us. Thank you, Susan. Thank you to everyone who's watching the live stream on our Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch TV pages. Again, we see all comments in real time. And also, if you have anything to offer a conversation as we go along, hit us with something. We will include you in the conversation. Now, someone who I don't know. I think maybe he needs a timeout after his behavior on the Temple of Doom podcast, because I just listened to that episode again, and I thought he was down on this movie when I was experiencing it, but I was re-listening to the show. Good God Almighty, was he taking some depressants, Tom Jettner? Yes, you stay on mute, my friend, until you will speak when spoken to. How you doing?
It's nice to see you too, Elliot.
Choose your words carefully, my friend. See, I told you I'd have you back.
You did have me back, yes.
Right?
Yes. Luckily, I gave you have the cocktail that I made this week in hand too, so I'm sure that helps.
And you reminded me to send you a link to the studio. So, well,
all right.
To balance out this, I do have, like I said, a very special guest that's joining us today. I'll tell you, I have known this person for some time. I've known her since our days at the Chicago Red Eye, where we were both part of the Red Eye Bloggerati. We both wrote blogs for Red Eye that made us got us famous. They got us a little cred on the journalistic streets around Chicago. She would also go on to she also had a column and a podcast called A League of Her Own, done with another friend of ours, Alex Quigley. And, well, I went on to write Grumpy Cat comics. She went on to not only host on sports radio, commentator, and an author. She went and won a freaking Peabody Award. She's the author of Sidelined, Sports Culture and Being a Woman in America. Please, everybody, let's give it up for Julie DiCaro.
I never would have won my Peabody without Red Eye.
I tell you.
I wouldn't have had the strength.
But yet, you see frickin' Stephen Markley, who also started. Not only has he gone on to write 2 books, he's in the writer's room. He's written an episode of Only Murders in the Building.
Wow.
And his last book, he got an endorsement from Stephen King.
Amazing.
So people who started at Red Eye have gone on to do some pretty incredible. I count you among them.
We were definitely the cool kids. Yeah, it was, glitterati of Chicago walking around.
Yeah.
Big stack of Red Eyes under our arm back when they were still paper form.
Well, for me, my thing was the Blackhawks beard challenge. Remember?
Oh, I remember. I think Jimmy Greenfield blew everyone out of the water.
Oh my God, the dude looked. I'm sorry, he looked like a serial killer by the time the whole thing was over. Because he was bald on his head, but he had that graying beard. He looked just scary as all.
I'm surprised he got on planes. It was amazing.
I've told the story several times. I had to go to Los Angeles on one of the times I was doing the the beard challenge was near the end, I swear to God, I kept getting pulled out of the line. I just like, we all know why. I mean, I was like looking like freaking Bin Laden at that point. So
my 2-year-old got pulled out of line once.
Oh, really? Well, this was to balance off somebody else.
To make it look like we're not racist. Here, look, we'll take this tiny blonde child.
Yeah. We're not profiling. But anyway, hey, Julie, thank you so much for joining us. I remember when we started this show in the very beginning, you were one of the first people I'd asked if you could be on. And so
and I totally missed out on the Winter Soldier. My fault, and I feel terrible about it.
Well, it's fine because, we had folks who wanted to talk about Winter Soldier, and I need you today. Today is a day I kind of really need you because I'm still recovering from our last show where one of my co-hosts just like crapped all over one of my favorite movies. So I kind of need, you're like my friend,
like the safe place. Yeah.
No, it's like like when you go to a party and you don't really you don't know anybody.
Or everyone there's a jerk. Yeah.
Yeah.
You find your friend in the corner.
Yeah, you find a friend in the corner. Although in this case, I'm surrounded by friends, but I don't like any of them right now.
I'm here for you.
I don't know what I did.
Is this about Temple?
I know what I did, but what did John and Dave do?
Okay. Yes, Julie. It is about Temple of Doom, and to add salt to the wound at the end, John described Temple of Doom as a collection of moments. Not even a movie, a collection of moments.
No, I said it was a Big Mac. It had many entertaining layers, none of which had nutritional value.
and then Dave just sat there smug the whole time.
Yeah.
For folks, if you're not watching the video, okay, if you're listening to this show as part of the podcast of the Radio Misfits Podcast Network, I just made like a smug marching motion that would have been Dave. Again, he's my ride or die, but man, he let me die last week.
Hey, I told you I liked that movie.
All right. Well, anyway, and Tom, being a good sport, is just taking all the abuse right now. So let's get. I appreciate that. All right. So today the conversation is about Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel, starring Brie Larson. Let's be honest, this movie had a bit of controversy surrounding it before it was released, and it continued to have controversy after its release. And I will remind everyone who's watching, not necessarily the crew, this is only the second non-Avengers film to score $1 billion at the box office. Okay, so Black Panther would be the first, and then Captain Marvel would follow up with $1 billion box office, which meant show audiences went for it. We can get into why. So what we're going to do is we're going to lead off, Julie, since you're our guest. What we like to do is we start off with what we call our 2-minute MCU movie review. So in like about 2 minutes or so, your overall review of the film, what you thought about it, and because we will dive deeper into it as we go, but just right from the get-go, what did you think about Captain Marvel?
Okay, well, I'll be honest. I was not fired up for Captain Marvel. I didn't read comic books at all as a kid, which can I say that on here? Am I still on? Hello, is my mic still working? Something about the format just didn't work for me. I love the stories, and I found that out as an adult watching Marvel movies. Had I known the stories were that great, I might have stuck with it. But something about, I had a very vivid imagination as a kid, and something about seeing the drawings took away from what was going on in my head. So I didn't like it. And so I didn't really know the story. And Captain Marvel wasn't Captain America, and she wasn't Spider-Man. So it wasn't something I was super fired up about. My kids took me to see this movie because they were like, you have to see it. We're taking you to see it. You don't have a choice in this. So I went and wound up literally not sobbing, but crying in parts of this movie because I felt like it had a really good grasp on what it is like oftentimes to be a woman, especially in this society, especially when you are working in a male-dominated field. So I walked out of it kind of blown away. But yeah, I mean, I talked it up to everyone, and I fought with guys online who were trashing it, and I went over to Rotten Tomatoes and yelled at everyone, and did all that kind of stuff afterwards. But I do think that like the marketing, and the complaining about it, and all the people that came out and said, "Oh, it's not good, don't go see it. She's a terrible Captain Marvel," blah blah blah, sort of worked on me quite a bit in the beginning. So I went in not excited, wound up loving this movie. Was that 2 minutes? It's been too long since I've been in radio. I have no idea. I can't gauge time anymore.
Don't worry.
Could have been 2 minutes. Could have been 10.
You were you actually brought up some really good points I want to revisit as we go along, especially that whole bit about, again, the leading up to the film, a lot of the discourse that was going on social media. Dave.
I enjoyed this movie. I think in rewatching it a few nights ago, it was probably the second time I had seen it. First, obviously, when it was in theaters, and it's a fun movie. It's interesting because it is sort of a prequel in the sense that the majority of the film was set in the 90s, so jumping back in time from the continuity of all the previous films. But it sort of fills in some gaps of questions you might have had about certain characters and certain the direction certain plot threads were heading going forward. It is cool that I believe this is the first female-led MCU film where the main character, obviously she's not the first, super-powered or significant female character, period. We've had Black Widow, of course. But just a film that centers on her, it took them long enough to get to it, but they got to it eventually. I do wonder, if a movie like, for instance, Black Widow, which maybe I'm doing revisionist history, but I feel like this movie was better received than that one. I know this one certainly made a lot more money than that one did, but as far as the reception it received critically, if Black Widow had come first, it would have been sort of a role reversal and it would have outperformed this one. But there's a lot of fun stuff happening this one. I love all the 90s setting and sort of the obvious little winks and nods to the audiences and cultural references from that time. I think the de-aging done to Samuel Jackson is great and pretty convincing. There's a lot of really interesting and inventive action sequences. This is a good movie. This is probably not one of my favorites, but when you hear this constant sort of, like you said, Elliot, the discourse of negativity surrounding the movie, and because I hadn't seen it in a while, it was better than I remember it being, and certainly better than I think a lot of people would have you believe it to be.
That de-aging on Agent Coulson, though, was kind of creeping me out. He looked like Robert Downey Jr. does now in those Aura ads that you see on Facebook.
Yeah.
Speaking of creeping me out, John.
Again, I do not deserve this. I love this movie on paper, and I hate to say I don't really like it because I don't want to be one of those guys that doesn't really like it. Yeah. I was defending this in the discourse. I love Brie Larson. I thought she was the only good thing in 21 Jump Street. I adored her on her episodes of Community. I was really excited that she was taking over. It was the most Samuel Jackson we'd seen in any Marvel movie. I love seeing Agent Coulson come back. I watched Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. way too long just because I really enjoyed him as a character. But something about the energy of this movie is slow compared to Marvel. It doesn't have that frenetic quality that the MCU has, and it takes itself very seriously, which at a time, probably to answer critics, at a time when people were starting to say that the MCU was turning into a comedy franchise and that they were pushing it too hard. I felt like this swung a little hard the other way to be serious, and I don't hate it. I don't have major problems with it, but it's not a movie I go back to very often. And in fact, as I watched it today, I was like, I don't know if I've seen this since maybe the year it came out. I know I've seen it at home after I saw it in the theaters. But there's there's issues of pacing and energy to this that I can't quite get over. I think it's good. I think it's well made, but I can't quite put it up in the upper echelon next to like a Black Panther, which is another movie I will admit is not made for me. But I don't know why I can't quite click into Carol Danvers' character. I feel like at the end of the movie, I still don't really know who she is in a way. And honestly, I have to say I was like that in the comics too. I mean, Carol Danvers was a character created to own the trademark of Ms. Marvel. And then when her comic stopped selling, she became a blank slate to give Rogue a personality in the X-Men. And then she became a cosmic character as Binary. And she's kind of bounced around a lot. So I have like Hal Jordan as Green Lantern, which is a much worse film, but it's kind of hard to pinpoint who she is in a way that I didn't have to with like Robert Downey Jr.
And it's funny, if you read the comics, her origin in the movie was more like her when she became Binary in the X-Men comics. It was closer to that than when she became, of course, Marvel or Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
No. And finally, our resident mixologist, Tom.
Well, this is one of my favorites. I wouldn't claim that it's the best in the MCU review. I wouldn't say it's but it's one that I really enjoy. It's one that I find myself going back to every now and then over the years, because I think a lot of the beats do hit, particularly if you're kind of looking for them. The whole relationship between the whole kind of like toxic thing that's going on between Jude Law and Brie Larson's character. That's something that if you can sniff it in that first series of sequences, and then it kind of keeps going back to it, and by the end of the movie, you're ready for that resolution. And I think it is really buoyed, in my opinion, by Samuel L. Jackson and Brie Larson have terrific chemistry. I could watch another 20 minutes of them in a car. And that kind of gets to one of the things that I feel like I need to talk about the most in this movie. The thing that I think is my favorite part of the movie is also kind of maybe its biggest dropped ball, if there is one, and that's the music. I think that the whole collection of songs on there of kind of early mid 90s Q101, 101.9, I'm an easy mark for that because of the nostalgia cycle, but it did its job. And bringing in songs like bringing in songs from people like Garbage and Nirvana and TLC and No Doubt, that was great. But I enjoy that, and it's my favorite part of the movie. At the same time, I wanted that to be more thematically involved. We know they're listening to music in the movie because we have the different sequences where it's referenced. But Carol Danvers went into space in 1989, and she comes back in 1995. What happened? Oh, like, just going off the top of my head, between 1989 and 1995, the entire cycle of Nirvana, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, Wu-Tang, Enter the Wu-Tang 36 Chambers comes out, De La Soul comes out. Red Hot Chili Peppers, Temple of the Dog. Oh, is that too early for John would know? Is that too early for Weezer? But Weezer's in there too.
No, Weezer's there.
Yeah,
but those are all male-led bands.
Hole finishes the.
That's
you
a
also
good
have
point.
Alanis Morissette, you have Liz Phair.
Liz Phair.
Like when I listened to the soundtrack, I was just noticing today, like I was like, wow, I forgot how much I love the music from this because they were all bands led by women.
Except for Nirvana.
Yeah. I thought that was intentional. I thought that was exactly why they did that.
Well, that's REM's in there too, I think.
Yeah, it's not every song, but it seems to be heavily weighted towards women.
Yes, but I think where I was getting at is the discovery of the music that had changed from 1989. She goes into space being a huge Guns N' Roses fan. And the way that the songs on the radio had changed so much sonically, even within the female-led bands, of going from something like in the 80s of like Heart or I guess at the time would be Willa Ford to a No Doubt or a TLC would be very, very different. And I wanted that to be more part of her character development. I just didn't quite get it. But it's not really a knock against the movie. It's like it's like a shot not taken in basketball. Like, they could have had a 3-pointer and they settled for a 2. So, I can't really complain. But
well, I agree. They didn't make Tom. They didn't make enough of the '90s setting, because I remember there was a lot of talk before. It's like, this is one we're going to set in the '90s, and I felt like with just a few changes structurally, this could have taken place like during the MCU. Other than like the music and like a shout out to Blockbuster and showing that computers were in cafes. I felt like it wasn't about the period it was set in, like a movie that would be set like and again, it's not a great movie, but Wonder Woman 1984 made way more out of its 80s setting than Captain Marvel made out of its 90s setting.
It should also be noted too that the first Wonder Woman movie and Captain Marvel came out a year apart.
Yeah, and ironically, this came out within a month of Shazam, which, as most comics fan know, Shazam was Captain Marvel until they lost the rights to the name to Captain Marvel at Marvel.
Which to this day, no, Shazam is still Captain Marvel to me. Sorry.
Shazam is Captain Marvel, but they can't sell it as Captain Marvel. It has to be Shazam, which is just what he says. Right. But at this point, the MCU is such a powerful force. There was no confusion. Yeah. I don't think Warner Brothers even worried about putting out Shazam next to Captain Marvel.
Before we lose Tom here, Tom, you did create a drink for today's show. Let me pull it up on the screen. So for folks who are watching the video live stream, I'm going to show it to you now. If you're listening to the podcast, you're going to want to go to Instagram.com/ReVU Cocktails. Tell us about it, Tom.
Well, I was kind of like trying to figure out when I was thinking of the 90s setting, I think the first thing that came to my mind was the clear beverage craze. Zima and things like that. And I was thinking of like a punch or something like that. And then it occurred to me I could do a clarified cocktail pretty easily. And then the question was what? And there is actually there's an old tiki cocktail called the Jet Pilot that I happen to really enjoy. This is a bit of a tweaked version of that because in my experience, the Jet Pilot, it's delicious, but I usually pay for it the next day. So this is 2 ounces of rum. It is half an ounce of grapefruit juice, half an ounce of lime juice. For these versions that I have out to you guys, I kind of tweaked it a little bit. I went 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 of John D. Taylor's Velvet Falernum, St. Elizabeth Allspice Dram, and honey syrup. And then once that's all mixed together, and a dash of absinthe. Once that's all mixed together, then you pour that into like an ounce of milk. And if anyone has ever done milk clarification on cocktails, what the citrus and the alcohol will do, will curdle, and that will kind of glob onto all of the different particulates and things, of the stray bits of pulp and things like that, and the coloring agents that are in the different elements of the drink, and will glom onto that. So when you pour it then through a coffee filter, like I did for this, it comes out almost entirely clear. And I could potentially run this through a second time and get it really, really clear if I wanted to, but I think it turned out really good. I know that Dave and Elliot, you're drinking yours. So
very nice, very good. I think this is one of your best yet.
I have this baby again in a little rocks glass with a Death Star ice globe. And yes, quite good. Missing the sprig of mint, though. I still haven't gone out to get the mint as I should have like ages ago for all the other stuff.
It's more decorative at this point. It's the Jet Pilot, I think, doesn't call for it. At least they didn't serve it to me when I went to 3 Dots and a Dash recently. So they didn't serve it to me at Jet Pilot on the Jet Pilot. But I like it there for color. It adds a little bit of something. So.
And for interest of full disclosure, I don't think we've gotten John his, and I had no idea how I could get one to you, Julie. So we're the next show for sure, though. Next show for sure.
I'm
you're
sitting
getting a
here
sample.
cocktailless. I don't know how I can be expected to work under these conditions. None of you are allies. This is terrible.
Well, because before we came on air, you said, well, just send me the recipe. And I think you'll see from these recipes that Tom puts together. I'm like, oh, geez,
it's not that bad.
He's got this Indonesian liqueur that I need to travel over 3 rivers to find.
Everything at the show is available at Binny's. That's where I do all my shopping at the Binny's in Lincolnwood. So
if you can't find it at Binny's, it's probably not worth drinking.
Exactly, Dave. 100%. Although we are not sponsored by Binny's yet.
I'm trying to get the sponsorship for the show.
Yeah, somebody. I mean, we plug how many different coffees and different types of booze on this show. We have yet to get a sponsorship.
Well, Tom, I will take credit for inspiring the clarified milk, because I had a clarified milk punch at a restaurant and immediately texted Tom, and I was like, this drink is amazing and I don't know how to make it. And then within a day, he had perfected it.
So Julie, if there's a drink that you want, Tom can make that stuff.
I'm still waiting for my family to bring me my Diet Mountain Dew that I've been waiting on for half an hour now.
They're letting
well,
you down.
I can always make you one, and I can find you a way. It's pretty shelf stable, so like I will find a way to.
Amazing.
Tom, when you use honey syrup, do you make your own, or is it store bought?
Oh, I just make my own, because all it is
sure.
2 parts honey to 1 part hot water. That's it.
It's like simple syrup with honey.
It's like Martha Stewart when she's like, you can use store-bought nutmeg, but I like to grow my own.
Exactly.
Tom had bees.
Yes, Tom has his own beehive out back.
Boy, I wish.
Just go in the backyard, scoop up a handful of bees.
Just put the bees in the drink. Cut out the middleman.
Adds color. Adds a dash of color.
The other running gag we have all in this is, despite the exoticness of the ingredients, is that if I ever suggest a drink with green chartreuse, Dave is under orders to immediately kill me because I've crossed a line.
Is it the Midori?
I think it's green chartreuse is just, it just sounds, I've arbitrarily selected it as just one more bottle that would go in my liquor cabinet.
I see.
And it's just a little too much. I already have a fridge full of vermouth, and I have 4 separate bottles of rum. So
wow.
What was your logic? It sounds too pretentious. Is that what it was?
Yeah, it just sounds too. It's supposedly very good, but it just sounds a little bit too pretentious. So.
I don't mean to bust anybody's bubble, but Jude, you've been riding that pretentious train for a while now.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't heard the previous stuff when you talking about cocktails, but I mean, clarified milk sounds like something that I could not achieve.
It's quite easy. It's quite easy. It's once you it really is. It really is. All it is you just mix the stuff and you pour it into an ounce of milk and you just let it sit for a few minutes, and then you pour it through a coffee filter. That's it.
Well, when you put it that way.
Yeah,
even that sounds like a lot for me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. It's like, that sounds like witchcraft to me. I'm sorry. That sounds like, I don't know if God intended for all that stuff to go together.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
They heard me.
Yes.
It has arrived.
Finally.
Nectar of the gods.
Well, thank you, Tom, again for that. If you are looking for the recipe, a wonderfully staged photo of it was called the Hyperspace Pilot, right?
Hyperspace Pilot, yeah.
You can find the drink as well as the recipe for this and all the other cocktails that Tom has created for the different movies that we have covered. He has also come up so far with two themed drinks for the first 2 Indiana Jones movies that we've talked about on the Top Men Indiana Jones podcast. The second one, the Temple of Doom one, being the easiest, I think, among the easiest out there.
Really?
Well, for you, I mean, that you put, I mean, it was champagne, a cube of sugar, and the red
bitters.
Yes, bitters,
Yeah.
which is pretty small. Well, no, I take it back. I think the Good Date, the first one you did for Raiders of the Lost Ark, which is actually one of my favorites. It was also quite simple too. But again, if you want to see any of these cocktails, again, Instagram.com/ReVU Cocktails. That's REVU Cocktails, where you'll see Tom with all his themed drinks, as well as every once in a while coming up with something new. I noticed that you've been throwing out a couple extra things here and there, bonus content, I like to say.
It's mostly classic stuff. So it's just like, I made a 3 dots and a dash. I make a lot of Mai Tais in my house. I make a lot of old fashions. I make a lot of martinis. So it's I think I'm very proud of myself when I make a good martini and I want to throw it out there. So
yeah, you should be.
We need a pilgrimage to Tom's house.
Yes, you go hit that liquor cabinet, man. Do that. And also, again, if you're watching the video live stream, we just had a quick appearance by Dexter. There he is.
He I could overhear he was scuffling with my cat. My wife banished him to the room, which is where I stream from. So he's technically being punished right now.
He's like the Flurkin. You have to hold on to him.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just make sure he doesn't swallow any tesseracts or anything like that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, going back to Captain Marvel, this is where we get a little bit deeper into things. I would say I'm first for my 2-minute review, echoing what everyone else said. I'll admit, Captain Marvel, not necessarily my favorite of the films, but it was the one that came right before Endgame, and we kept expecting there to be one vital piece of the puzzle. How were the Avengers going to beat Thanos? How are they going to take him on after the events of Infinity War? Amazingly, all the pieces would be there, boom, with Ant-Man and the Wasp that would come right before this film, and did a lot of setting up as to how things would play out in Endgame. I'm with you, John. I'm a huge fan of Brie Larson and all the other things she's done. I loved her in Scott Pilgrim versus the World. She's great in that bit role. I think she has incredible humor and all. I could see they were trying to bring that out with her in this film. And hell, I remember watching it again. I was going, golly, she smiles a lot in this film. I think one of the criticisms was, you should smile more. No, she smiled quite a bit in this film, especially those scenes with Nick Fury. I did like the chemistry that she had, and you see why Fury had so many people loyal to him and willing to, pretty much go to the mat for him like they did. So I enjoyed that. My one problem, if I'm going to have a problem with anything in this movie, I'm sorry. But the revelation of how Nick Fury loses his eye, I'm telling you, it's like one of the best lines in Avengers, in the first Avengers movie, where he says, "The last time I trusted somebody, I lost an eye." And you're like, ooh.
It's in Winter Soldier, isn't it?
Was that in Winter Soldier?
Yes, in Winter Soldier.
Yeah, it's in Winter
Okay.
Soldier.
Winter Soldier is when he exposes it because he has the retina scan on his dead eye.
Yeah. And they're going, ooh, what story is that? No, let's never, I never want to know that. I'm just curious as what happened. When you find out it's because, and I'm sorry, you never hold a cat up to your face like that. Anyone can tell you that. And even
that cat was asking to go down.
Yes. The cat wanted
that cat was his friend the entire movie and asked to be put down. And he didn't listen.
Add
But
to
he
that.
also didn't for a scratch that killed his eye, he seemed to be fine. He was singing the Marvelites
Like a cat.
5 minutes later with a gash through his eyelid. Like it didn't hurt him at all.
But Dave and I both know, anyone who has cats, though, you do not ignore a cat scratch, no matter how little it is. I mean, and that was serious. The fact that he did not get any medical attention for it was
even the
worse.
Skrulls wanted him to get medical attention. And they can change their face whenever they want to.
There's a great moment, though, when the Flurkin attacks the Kree and Maria Rambeau just looks at it and goes, okay. Like that. I love that moment.
Those were some great scenes. Because
I remember at Target when the film was out, there were plush cats where you could squeeze them and the tentacles would shoot out. And my son wanted nothing to do with that. I did it once and he was in the DVD section.
Elliot, the first time I got scratched at work, I actually got cat scratch fever, which I just thought was a fake thing, like something from a song, but it's real.
Did you shut up?
Yeah, so it's
that's a bad day.
Yeah, it's this was like the first couple months of me working there, and I've worked there for 10 years now. But yeah, so I got scratched, and I didn't think anything of it, and then like maybe the next day I was showering, I felt a lump under my armpit. I'm like, oh, this is kind of scary. There's another one on the same side of my arm, lower, maybe in my elbow area. It's freaking out, of course. I go to like an emergency immediate care thing, and the guy, the doctor goes, before I told him what I did for work, goes, "You work with toxic plants?" That was his question. No, not as such. And I said, "Well, I do work with animals." And he said, "Did you get scratched by a cat recently?" And then a little bell went off in my head. Is, "Oh yeah, I did." "Oh, you probably have cat scratch fever." I've never actually seen it myself, but I'm probably going to diagnose you with that now. And he gave me antibiotics, and in a few days it was cleared up. But
Ted Nugent with the medical advice. I had no idea.
Yeah, so I learned my lesson that day.
Yeah, my girlfriend developed neuropathy from a cat scratch.
Oh man,
from her favorite cat. So
wow,
if it gets in the system just right,
that's harsh.
It is. No, but cat scratches and bites are the worst. They always get infected, always. So
that's how tough Nick Fury is.
Yeah,
that he can take a cat scratch and keep on singing,
and yet lose his eye. So there
pop out an eye, pop in a new one. It's all good.
Right,
Nick Fury, I got work to do.
I forgot about that. I forgot that Agent Coulson brings out a selection of eyes.
Yeah. Yeah.
John, I was going to ask you, what is the comics explanation for his loss of eye?
I actually don't remember. The only thing I do know was that Nick Fury was created as a World War II comic called Sergeant Fury and the Howling Commandos, and you see the Howling Commandos in Captain America. And then when they brought him back, they decided to move him up to the modern era. And it's an issue of Fantastic Four where he first arrives. And that's when they come up with the James Bond angle, because it's, as you well know, it's the middle of Bond mania. Yeah. And they gave him an eye patch just to make him look different from the other comic, which was still being published. But I actually don't remember the story that explains it.
Okay.
Elliot?
I, as a matter of fact, know the story. Garth Ennis would explain it in his Fury miniseries.
Oh, so a much later retcon.
Yeah. So it's near the end of World War II when Fury is serving and he gets shot in the eye by a Nazi soldier. So
okay.
That's what takes it out.
It's so much more interesting to get scratched by a cat.
I guess.
I agree because it's definitely like he's been playing this up for 30 years.
Yeah.
That like he was on some super secret mission as part of he recognizes it, that it's part of his mystique. So long as he doesn't say anything about it, he doesn't tell any story, people can fill it with their imaginations.
I'll be honest, when it dawned on me in the theater that was what he was talking about when he said last time I trusted someone, I laughed my ass off. Because for exactly that reason, he wants you to think it's some big. I assumed it had something to do with Robert Redford, that it was some big, like, mysterious. I don't remember what's Robert Redford's name. I always forget.
Pierce.
Yeah, Pierce. Alexander Pierce. I thought it was something to do with that something in South America or clandestine spy stuff. No, just cat flirking.
And he liked that cat too. He was very sweet to that cat.
He did love that cat.
He's very into that cat.
But here's the thing: every time we hear guys talking about Captain Marvel, I always hear the same thing, right? Like, it was just a little too slow. Like, it just, and I think that for women, there are things in this movie that resonate with you continually, like over and over and over, every few minutes. And I don't know, at least for me, and I don't want to speak for all women, but action sequences do not resonate with me. My eyes just kind of glaze over a little bit. I'm like, oh, punching, fighting, kicking, whatever. And then it's, it's the other stuff that I'm much more interested in. So, this movie starts out, the first thing the thing about Nick Fury is that he's the first man in that movie, if you notice, that doesn't talk down to her, that doesn't talk to her like she's, a stupid woman. You get the scene of all the guys saying, it's called a cockpit, guys telling her she doesn't belong, boys picking on her. If you're a girl in this country who played with boys growing up like I did, which is a lot of girls, right? I mean, we used to say like tomboys, but no, this is most girls these days. Like, we grew up with sports, we grew up playing with the neighborhood boys, and you get knocked down a lot and you have to keep getting back up. And that scene in the movie where they show her getting up over and over and over again. Let me tell you, like, as a woman working in sports media, that hit me right in the chest. I mean, that was the point in the movie where I started crying, because I was like, same reason I started crying in the first Wonder Woman movie, because when she goes into no man's land, it's because she's never lived in a world where a woman isn't the strongest, bravest person in the room. That's not a world that women in America have ever been exposed to. And so, there's the guy who tells her to smile more, where she's flicking the newspaper up and down. There's, all these things. And the biggest one of all is Jude Law. And so many women I know, this scene meant something to them, because you have these men who sort of want credit for what you've done and want to say that you're here because of me. And if you can prove to me, then you can move on to the next level. But of course, you can never prove it to them, because they're always going to be in this position where they want you to be continually full of gratitude and giving them credit. And so all these things, one after another, you just kind of sit there in the theater and you're like, wow, it's not just me. Like, it's enough, and it's a big enough of a story. And these are shared experiences that they're in a Marvel movie. And as a woman, that's not something I've ever seen before. And I think it's the way that a lot of Black people reacted to Black Panther, that you are seeing experiences that resonate with you in a Marvel movie, which have always been traditionally the domain of like white dudes. So to me, it wasn't boring. It wasn't slow, because I can understand how what a man might not notice to us is a deeply profound experience that someone else is acknowledging. And those are coming every few minutes in this movie.
I have to, not to steer us off too far off, but I want to ask you, and if you will come back, please.
Absolutely.
Because when we talk about She-Hulk, did you watch the She-Hulk series?
I didn't.
Okay, you're gonna have to watch it, because there are a lot of points that you're making about this movie now that I'm sure you might have heard a lot of the discussions surrounding She-Hulk.
Yeah.
And I would love that, first watch it and then love to have you come back, because you bring up a lot of great points here. So I'm just like, again, like, I'll be honest, Black Panther, I liked it, but it's not, like, to me, one of the all-time best movies. But I will already acknowledge Black Panther was not made for me. It just wasn't.
And Marvel's at a point where it doesn't have to make movies for everybody to be a success, because they are so successful. This is a perfect example. You and I have already said this movie's not for me. And Black Panther, and then Shang-Chi is coming up. We'll discuss that. It's another movie made for another audience. And just because we are inured in the MCU doesn't mean it has to be our favorite movie every time.
But the thing is, like, whenever your guys say this movie wasn't for me, white men say that, every movie wasn't made for us, though. And we still found ways to enjoy them. I mean, women have been watching superhero movies forever. Those movies weren't made for us.
Yeah, I think the movie also does a really good job of telegraphing that, or communicating that. I mean, I don't have any direct experiences beyond in terms of the professional women in professional capacity, besides, my wife is a scientist, so she deals with some of that.
That's badass.
She is badass. She's very badass. They do a good job, I think, of telegraphing to the audience, like, you should kind of pay attention to this. So they do lots of the little interactions with Jude Law from the beginning, but they they established that in the early fight scene. It's like literally the first bit of action that you see is that hand-to-hand fight scene. What is, points to the thing, what is given can be taken away, which, as Julie was saying, sets up that metaphor of like, well, you're here because of me. And even if you're not in tune to that as a woman, and particularly a woman as a professional setting, like I was, like I could pick up that, like, okay, pay attention to that. And then they keep coming back to that relationship via the communicator. She's phoning it in. She rags on Fury for phoning in that they're at the facility on his pager to his boss, when she's talking to her commanding officer, who's like trying to find a hyperspace connection or a jump port, jump point to get to them. Exactly. And he's harping on those same things. You need to control your emotions. You need to do this, which, I mean, even for a straight white male, like I knew that was like immediately pay attention to that as something, as something that women have to deal with from their male colleagues. So it's harped on repeatedly, and then you get it in the main fight scene at the climax, and you could pick up to No Doubt's Just a Girl perfectly from that situation as well. And then going into the final confrontation, where it becomes then very satisfying, where she pulls the Indy and just shoots him
before he's even done talking, which is great. Because this idea of women interrupting men is something that, like, you're too emotional, you're too hysterical, don't interrupt. And she's just done with it all. And I felt that deeply. There are many times I wanted to just Indy men that I worked with. Just shut up. just quiet.
Yeah. I was going to say that I did like the one point that, as I was watching it again, two very clever storytelling bits, what you alluded to, Tom, the bit on her neck, which in the beginning is presented, if you're without any real context, well, you would assume it was them giving her those powers. That was there to give her the power. Then you find out it wasn't there to give her power, it was there to inhibit her. And throughout the film, we keep seeing Carol Danvers remembering the times she's fallen. But when we get to the climax at the end, it's like something clicks and she goes, yes, I've fallen, but every time I've gotten back up. And you see it, boom, boom, boom. Now they're going, okay, that was pretty cool. That they knitted that whole sequence together to make a nice, to make a good point there, but also, as you're saying, Julie, to express something that you're gonna feel, or they would think there are a lot of women in the audience who feel this way.
Yeah, and also when, they're telling her constantly throughout the beginning of the movie, we saved you. You are this way because of us. And at one point, and Jude Law specifically keeps saying, because of me. And, at one point she realizes it's not coming from him. It's coming from them. And wow, I'll tell you, it's coming from inside. It's coming from herself. And, having been a woman who worked on sports radio, there are plenty of men who wanted to take credit for where I was. And it didn't have anything to do with them. It had to do with me. And I felt that scene very deeply. That went right through me.
She didn't even need to be there for him to take credit. That's how he figures out that he's talking to a Skrull. Mm-hmm. Which was the scene I forgot. He said, because he's asking her questions that only the real one know. And then she said, yeah, I remember the blue blood going through. And he goes, whose blood? She goes, and then he attacks her because she didn't give him the credit he deserved.
Yeah, I think that's right.
What about Julie? What did you think about Annette Bening in this role? Because she does two roles. She does Marvel, as the scientist, but then she puts on the face of the Kree Supreme Intelligence. So she's almost kind of taking the Jude Law line.
But it's not really her, right? I mean,
no, it's not really her. Yeah.
I thought it was a really cruel bit of manipulation because I think especially in, like I said, male-dominated industries, it's so difficult for women to find each other, first of all, which is why her relationship with Maria and with Monica are so special, that she does have another woman who's going through this with her. But especially to have female mentors, especially in fields like, you know, being a naval pilot or being an Air Force pilot, having someone who's already been there, who is can serve as a mentor role to you. It's so rare and such a precious thing. And for the Kree to exploit that to control her, I thought was especially cruel. I thought Annette Bening was great in this. I mean, who doesn't want an Annette Bening to follow around and tell you, you know, pick you up on your bad days and tell you how great you're doing and tell you, you know, what a rock star you are, and how you're doing this job because you're the best at it, not because, you know, I could have picked anybody. And those are such powerful things for women because we hear that so rarely. And yeah, I mean, that was my thought, was that it's so cruel that they use that to manipulate her.
And then you get the double whammy at the end with the jacket and the Nirvana song and everything like that.
Yep.
And it's,
It should be noted that in the comic books, the Supreme Intelligence looks like a giant green blob with tentacles. So Annette Bening was definitely an upgrade from the comics on that.
Definitely a better choice.
Yeah.
There's a few steps past MODOK is the Supreme Intelligence.
Yeah. Ugh. I have yet to see Quantum Mania, so I have not.
Tom, have you seen it?
I haven't seen it yet. No.
I was going to say Elliot's the straggler, but
It dropped 70% in its second weekend, and here's one reason.
Yeah, MODOK. Yeah,
we have a podcast about this, and half of the panel was like, "Yeah, I didn't get it."
Yeah. So, hey, you know what? I don't think Quantum Mania was made for me. I really don't.
No,
they took
you're
out
not
the
a
one
tiny molecule guy.
They took out the one Latino. They took him out. There was one Latino. They didn't even have him in this one. So obviously not for me. You know. So yeah, I know, Julie.
Yeah,
exactly.
and there's no three wombats.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, he's not in it. He's not in this one. Son of a bitch.
Michael Pena's not in it.
Nope.
No.
What am I going for? I'm not.
Yes.
He's the best part of the whole thing. Waiting for his recaps.
Yep.
The only one of them in it is David Dastmalchian plays a different character.
Yeah.
So he does the voice of his CG character, but he's the only one of them that comes back. T.I.'s not in
I
it.
don't like that.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
I'm still mad Judy Greer's not in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A couple interesting things as I was watching this. Of course, the next Disney Plus show to be coming out this year will be Secret Invasion. And there was a lot in this particular film that sets up Secret Invasion, the Skrulls. And then we're going to be seeing the Marvels coming out soon. Julie, have you seen Ms. Marvel? Okay, we're going to need to get you caught up, girlfriend.
Here's the
We're gonna
problem.
need to get her a Disney Plus subscription, apparently.
Yeah.
Once we got past Endgame, I just sort of checked out. It just, the multiverse is just, I love Loki, and I loved WandaVision, but the multiverse for me is just really hard to wrap my head around. And I've just sort of put them all off. Like, I'm assuming I'll just take a weekend and like binge them all straight through once they're all streaming. But yeah, I haven't been able to get myself to go.
Well,
There's a lot of good stuff, but I feel like after Endgame, it's like the lights have come on after Last Call. It's like everything kind of feels like you're sweeping up. It's like you went away for the weekend and you went to this like amazing party on Saturday, and everything since Endgame has been this Sunday morning in the hotel.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Like, I'm seeing a lot of the same people. It's pretty good.
And I hate you for asking me that, because I'm always yelling at people how they need to support women and have their own series, and you have to watch it. And I'm always like, we have to go out and support, this actress because her movie's opening today. We have to go support Viola Davis because Woman King is out. And then I don't watch the two that I literally have on my TV 10 feet away from me.
I would say, well, make sure watch it. I really think, though, the reason I really want you to watch She-Hulk is because you were also a lawyer, mind you. She-Hulk has as much to do about law as ER had to do with
Jamila Jamil's in it too, and I adore her.
Yes,
so
She-Hulk is really fun.
I will watch it. I
enjoyed the hell out of She-Hulk.
It's just, you guys, there's so much. I mean, there's, there was The Last of Us, and there's, Mandalorian, and there's so much happening.
I was talking to my parents the other day, and we always talk about what we're watching, and I hung up on them and went, "Oh yeah, Poker Face." There's so
Poker
much
Face.
I
just discovered the Great British Bake Off.
Yeah.
Like, there's
yeah. If you want to talk about a female-led series, that's great.
Poker Face
It's
is
actually
really
on
good.
Yeah,
Poker
Poker
Face.
Faces. Yeah, I agree. It's great.
And Ted Lasso comes back this
Yeah,
week too.
tonight.
And Shrinking was amazing.
Shrinking has
There's
been
just-
fun. Yeah.
There's too much happening.
Yeah, so I'm with you, Julie. I've been the same way about post Endgame, as you said, John. It was fun. I was like, there's a lot of stuff coming up now that I'm not sure. Again, and I will say this about a lot of stuff that's happening with the post Endgame stuff. The shows, the movies. I'm like, not so much for me, but that's fine. It doesn't have to necessarily be for me. I'll enjoy it.
And Disney knows that. Bob Iger this week came out and said, we're going to do less sequels. He's like, we're going to do a little less Marvel, we're going to do a little less Star Wars, and we're definitely doing less sequels.
I saw Love and Thunder, and Ragnarok is probably my second favorite after Winter Soldier. And I so wanted another Ragnarok, and it just wasn't. And there were moments that I laughed, and stuff, but I don't know. Stuff's starting to feel a little thin.
Yeah, I don't know what's wrong with Love and Thunder. It's going to be an interesting episode because the only thing I could point to was like Taika Waititi's in everything, and I'm like, I don't think he gave this as much attention as he gave Ragnarok.
Maybe.
All I
It was a
know.
little all over the place.
Well,
Yeah.
before we get to Love and Thunder, mind you, the drink that Tom created for the Dark World was probably one of the most potent drinks he's ever done. So we're probably going to need something really potent for Love and Thunder. Because if I got to watch that one again,
I laughed. I saw it in one of those places where you can order food and stuff, and and drinks. So I was laughing, and it was enjoyable. But like Ragnarok is like it's on TBS like every weekend, and that's one that I watch it every single time it's on, and I laugh in all the same places.
yeah, you can sit down. It can be at any point. You can sit down and watch it and like enjoy it. Unlike Love and Thunder, and Dave is going to have to listen to me complain about this ad nauseum. We went to see it at the Pickwick on the opening week, and for the second time in a row, the Pickwick let me down because this time
Wasn't that where you had your disastrous No Time to Die screening?
the disastrous No Time to Die.
Hey, what happened when you
experience.
saw Thor? I don't remember anything going awry.
Yes, because you didn't hear the freaking teenagers that were sitting off of my left
Oh.
shoulder yapping throughout the whole movie.
I had teenagers thrown out in the middle of Love and Thunder.
Yep, see.
It was a bad teenager movie.
They were probably the same teenagers too. They were probably hitting all the theaters.
Teenagers love Natalie Portman with cancer
Oh wow!
because
Why are they so-
teenagers are mean.
Why are they so loud too? I'm just always like, just stop yelling. Why? Did we yell that much as teenagers?
Yes.
No, most certainly not. We did not yell that
Yeah,
much.
I did.
I probably did too.
I started a band in junior year. I yelled.
Oh goodness! All right, let's get back on the movie, but get back on track here. Again, for those who are just tuning in now and watching the MCU review for the first time, this is the show when we talk all about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We've started with Iron Man all the way to present. Today we are talking about Captain Marvel, the film that would bring us into Avengers Endgame and the end of the Marvel Cinematic Universe's Phase 4. Although I think, what was it?
It's 3.
Phase 3, right.
We just finished Phase 4.
We're Phase 3, but I think Spider-Man, was it No Way Home?
No Way Home
Would be what the epilogue of Phase 3?
Far From Home is the epilogue.
Far From Home, I'm sorry.
The one with Jake Gyllenhaal is the epilogue to 3.
To 3, got it. Okay. So
because Phase 4 is all about the multiverse, and No Way Home is a major multiverse.
Got it. We're talking about the films. Every week we have our MCU review crew chime in, have a custom cocktail, and a special guest today, Julie DiCaro, Peabody Award-winning author, radio commentator, sports writer, editor at Deadspin.
I'm the EIC at Deadspin.
The EIC. Okay. I have to ask you about this. Okay.
Okay.
And because I'm sorry. I mean, trust me, I've been following everything, and there is a special brand of troll that chimes in on the Deadspin Facebook page all the freaking time.
Yeah.
I swear to God, it's like for folks who do nothing but critical, I go, they spend a hell of a lot of time reading everything and then bitching about it.
Yeah.
I'm just curious. Is it as bad as it looks like on my side? Just reading all that.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty bad. I definitely just don't even look at any of the comments anymore, which is a shame because, you'd like to interact with your audience, and I've always done that. But it's bad. It's not sincere. It's, selective outrage about things that they know that people know nothing about. There's, the people on the right hate us because they think we're like woke libtards. And then the people on the left think that we're somehow like not woke enough and that we're all scabs. And so, we've really just started doing our thing and ignoring everybody.
My favorite thing now is like apparently Deadspin is obsessed with Aaron Rodgers.
Yes, that's me.
Like, yeah. Oh, it's you. Okay.
I'm writing.
You're writing. Well, everybody's talking about freaking Aaron Rodgers. I mean,
I'm writing the thing that tracks all the stupid things he does and says.
Yeah.
Every day, pretty much. That's me. I'm obsessed with making fun of Aaron Rodgers. I rarely write about him seriously.
I can't see how any Bears fan would take issue with that.
No. And not just Bears fans. Every fan is very receptive to it.
Yeah.
He'd be a great villain for the MCU.
Oh God, because he's so. It's like when. Do you guys watch WWE?
Yeah.
It's like when Daniel Bryan turned heel and was, doing the like woke hero, like eco warrior kind of thing. He's just so convinced that he's right, which I guess is what makes a good supervillain, right? I mean, Thanos, Magneto, yeah. Killmonger.
Technically, the Kree in this movie are really convinced they're right because they're bombing a bunch of refugees into extinction.
Tom keeps trying to pull it back to the actual movie.
Well, thank you for bringing that up because it's like, again, for a bit of perspective too, this movie came out during the previous administration. And I remember watching this and going, oh my God, they've taken shots at the president of the time. And I was expecting the MAGAs to go nuts about the whole thing. When one of the Kree refers to Earth as a shithole planet.
You got to understand metaphor and able to do that. And they're not going to get that too. That's too. They're not going to catch that.
It took place during the Clinton era. MAGAs are ready to blame Clinton for just about anything.
He wasn't even president then, idiot.
So I was saying, oh my God, I remember that now. That was it was ridiculous, but still.
Can I just give a shout out to Ben Mendelsohn for being two amazing roles in a row, this and Rogue One. He's so great as Talos, and he just winds up being so charming and lovable. Not what I expected.
That was the turn, though. I have to admit, it kind of threw me off because there's a point when Mendelsohn's character, appears in his disguise, and you're thinking, "Ooh, nefarious, undercover." He's up to bad things, and then all of a sudden, there's a comedic turn that takes place, and his character is now, kind of like not goofy, but disarming in a way, and
waka waka waka.
Yeah, and I'm like. Huh? And I was even saying that, going, holy shit, this is Krennic from Rogue One. And I hated Krennic in Rogue One.
Daggett from Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah, you could pinpoint the exact moment that turn happens. It's when he lifts the soda to take a sip out of it.
Yes,
which is like straight out of Pulp Fiction.
That felt like like a nod to Tarantino and Pulp Fiction. Yes, exactly, because you had Samuel L. Jackson.
It's hinted a little bit when they do the alien autopsy.
Yeah,
when he's all tender to his dead comrade. Great little joke there about Samuel L. Jackson checking out what's under the sheet.
Yes,
just to see what's there. But that little tender moment kind of fills you in of like, well, maybe things aren't a little more super sympathetic villain. And even when they're going through Carol's past memories in the beginning of the movie, there's a few moments here and there where he's just like, I didn't put this stuff in your head or anything like that, where he's trying to.
What did you put in your head? And he says nothing that wasn't already there.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the first story I've even seen that puts the Skrulls in a positive light. The Skrulls are the original evil aliens. They're in Fantastic Four #2. Fantastic Four, of course, being the first Marvel comic. And they've always been played as shifty, nefarious. They're, analogs for spies. Secret Invasion, as you said, which will be a series, was a huge crossover of the entire Marvel universe in 2008 of like, who's a Skrull? Who's not a Skrull? I've never seen a story that ever sympathized with a Skrull before. Human Torch married a Skrull, and they didn't paint her in a positive light.
No, didn't she end up betraying him at some point?
Yeah, she was a retcon too because Human Torch married Thing's girlfriend, and then everybody realized that was a bad move.
Oh yeah, no,
so they were like, "Well, it wasn't Thing's girlfriend; it was a Skrull."
No, but that would be the yes, of course. Fantastic Four #2 would come out during the big space race. It was the Red Scare. The Skrulls were, yes, as you said, symbolic of we're being spied on. We can't trust who's next to us. Same thing as in Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. To me, one of the most underappreciated movie sequels out there. I'm plugging the Top Men Indiana Jones podcast and giving you a taste of what I'm going to be saying. And if you're looking at the video, my co-hosts are like, what?
That's another one I like. I'm a sucker for bad sequels, so you and I are like Elliot.
It's the Moonraker of Indiana Jones movies.
Moonraker. Wow.
That first half an hour is pretty fun.
I think it makes a really poignant point, though, that, what you find out about people that are different from you when you're actually on the ground is different than what you're told by the government and, people in the media. And, it's much different. I mean, I went to Pakistan a couple of years ago expecting to go to this country where, I was Daniel Pearl and we had to be, I'd watch every second that someone didn't grab us and throw us in a van. And I got there and it was nothing like that. It was lovely. I wasn't concerned for my safety one single second that I was there. I thought of that was sort of hearkening back to all the demonization of Muslim Americans and the demonization of immigrants and everyone who's different than us around the world. And I really kind of like that part of this movie.
Specifically on the refugee aspect, because that was a particular flashpoint of the politics, at that time. And then also to find out that you have a Kree defector in this case in Annette Bening's character who is helping these supposedly their mortal enemy. Very, very clever as far as he goes, it's not a weapon. They're trying to just get them away from Jude Law's character and Ronan the Accuser shows up again. And
it is Lee Pace. I didn't realize. I have to check the credits to make sure it was Lee Pace.
Lee Pace in full makeup is just the crime of the century. Speaking for the women out there.
The black smeared on his face that he did in Guardians. That's why it was hard to recognize him.
Yeah.
Because in the first scene of Guardians, he smears that black stuff on his face, and then that becomes his look.
Yeah. No, I know. I see that. You're right, Julie. I see. Well, like whenever what they did with Oscar Isaac in X-Men Apocalypse. It's like, seriously?
What they did to Apocalypse in X-Men Apocalypse. There's a podcast right there.
True.
Those are always the best villains. I mean, it's such a simple, obvious point to make. But I mean, it's another superhero that you're like, or a villain that you're kind of like, I kind of get where you're coming from, though. Like, I kind of, I see it.
The Skrulls, though, were the biggest. Were one of the top villains in Marvel, and I have a feeling that's what they want to do with Secret Invasion. That they're going to try to up. I know it's going to be like a faction of the Skrulls that are deciding they don't want to live in peace. They're like the terrorist sect. My dog's chiming in. The Palestinian terrorist group.
Hamas.
They're like, these are like Hamas, but most of Palestine, they're freaking please. We just want to live in peace. We want to, but you have these, radicals who just can only come through us doing this. So
I think I think it could be the opposite. I think it could be the Talos group, because they weren't soldiers, and they say like, look, these are children. These are obviously not soldiers. I think they're going to be the faction, but the government of the Skrulls, I think, is going to be an invading army in the same way of Picard, which we've been talking about constantly on Captain Andy Comics. At the end of season 2, Alison Pill becomes the Borg Queen, and in season 3 they go, yeah, that was a faction of the Borg. The Borg are still awful.
Have you been watching Picard, Julie?
I don't do Star Trek.
Oh,
I know. I see all your faces. I get it. Let me have it.
No. It's okay. It's okay.
Let me tell you why. When I was a kid, my dad always made me watch Star Trek, and I was so uncomfortable in the Captain Kirk kissing scenes that it turned me off. I'm still like, when people kiss on screen, I'm still like super cringy about it. Okay. And that turned me off at a really young age. I recognize its place and why so many people like it. Yes.
Star Trek or kissing on screen?
That makes a lot of people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
As a little kid, it was so cringy to me, and I just never picked it back up. And I know that, like, Deep Space Nine and Next Generation and stuff are like hugely important to people that I know, and I appreciate that.
In a similar fashion, Julie, during my formative years, I got a very strange impression of what kissing actually was by watching Roger Moore kiss on James Bond movie. Yeah. Where I thought you were literally supposed to put your lips up to the woman's face and like try to suck her in, and
then go like this with your head.
Yes, exactly.
I've always likened it to, it's like he's sucking a very thick milkshake.
Yeah.
Yeah. To this day, when I see people kissing,
when he's pushing 60 and the women are still in their early 20s.
Yeah.
So when he's kissing and then you just see all the age lines in his face, it's rough. Yeah. And I love Roger Moore though, so yeah, I don't want to speak ill of the dead.
To this day, when I see people kissing on film, I'm just like, no, kissing! Like, it's just so uncomfortable for me to watch. I don't know why.
Oh, God.
Deep-rooted childhood trauma.
No, I get you. And then every once in a while you why I'm sorry, I've turned this into a kissing podcast now, but we will rate the kissing in the MCU.
This is what happens when men do a podcast about Captain Marvel.
Yeah. Oh God.
Whenever I say I don't watch Star Trek, everyone has the exact same reaction that you guys all did. I just watch simultaneously. Your faces just darken. Well, and that's typically what it looks like.
I said, Dave, you're not a big Star Trek fan.
No, not.
And
I just went all in on Star Wars, and
me too.
Yeah,
I've actually gotten more into Star Trek these days than Star Wars. I'm getting a little fatigued from Star Wars, and a friend of mine told me it was a sign of maturity that I actually preferred Star Trek over Star Wars because it's like it's. The reality is that even the title is starting to depress me, that it's always, you can never have star peace. It's always, it's like they're constantly in a state of war.
That's what threw me about Force Awakens. Like when Force Awakens started and the Stormtroopers were like coming in, I'm like, already? Like we didn't get anything? Right? This is the next thing after Jedi and we're already in the worst place.
I thought it was over.
It's been like 19 years or something? We're already back. They've already built another Death Star, only at this time it's a whole planet. Come on.
Yeah. So
we need like a Star Wars, like with She-Hulk being a lawyer, like a funny lawyer show. We need Star Wars like lawyer show.
They came up with an actual animated show. It was going to be called Star Wars Detours. It was supposed to be comedy, completely produced and ready to go. Disney canceled it. They shelved it. Probably. Who knows when?
Whereas Star Trek hired a Rick and Morty guy to create a brilliant animated series.
Yes, yeah. I've seen lots of Lower Decks, and that's But I don't know if they've done anything like that. What's the equivalent of that? I guess the equivalent of that in the MCU would be She-Hulk. I guess that would like the.
Well, She-Hulk. Julie, I will recommend that because it's more of a comedy and it's not so. You don't have to know all the MCU stuff.
I've heard it's great. It's on my list. It's just there's some stuff in front of it.
Okay, so
Julie, you do not have to have watched like Endgame to get into You could start She-Hulk episode 1 and not be like, wait, that person was in this happened there. It's pretty self-contained.
Although when you realize that Man Bull and El Aguila, who seem incredibly cheesy in this show, those are very faithful interpretations of the comic book characters on She-Hulk. I'm like, oh man, those look really cheesy. Then I went back and looked at the handbook of the Marvel Universe. I'm like, oh nope, that's exactly what he looks like in the comic book. So can't criticize that.
Well, I think it's just, the criticism of like, is something comic accurate or things like that. I get that, but I do feel like when it comes to this movie, that this movie is a great example of like Twitter is not real life, because of all the criticism that came down for it of like, well, this isn't like, we talk about the Skrulls being sympathetic. That's not remotely comic book accurate. I guess we have gender flipped Marvel, the original Captain Marvel, and come up with a new origin story for that character. But all a lot of the stuff they changed was the best parts of the movie, and I think that a lot of the discord on social media is, I don't want to say overblown, but it's just not. It doesn't penetrate society as much, because the movie made $1 billion. This movie made an enormous amount of money.
It reminds me of stuff that happens on Twitter, like this person's been canceled, and then you go out into the world and you talk about it to other people, and they're just sort of like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I've never heard that, and you're just like, wow, it's been trending at the top of Twitter for 3 days, and they're just like, I don't know. Or
the internet finding weird reasons to hate on Brie Larson. Like, I don't get it.
Yeah,
she's mentioned that.
The thing that a lot of I'm rarely on Twitter. The only time I go on Twitter is to like plug the podcast or share a link. But the reality is that Twitter has way fewer users than Facebook, and the majority of people on the planet are not on Twitter. And the only time you ever hear about big things on Twitter is when traditional media talks about it. And then that stuff gets passed around.
That's part of the problem, is that like Twitter isn't that important, but every journalist in the world is on it.
Right.
So they're constantly telling you it's important.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah. So beyond that, to the point, as you were saying, Tom, that they do change a lot of things. I'll say it. I've said it before. I'll say it again. It's a lesson that I learned on Shaken Not Heard. The James Bond movies are so loosely related to the original books. They just took different parts from different books to make them into the movie. So if you were a James Bond fan and you were okay with that, there shouldn't be any, you shouldn't have any problems with them doing the same things with the comic books, where, it's much, there's so many different versions of different stories that have done in Marvel. Like they did the Skrulls one day, then they retcon them, then they bring them back, and they retcon that. There's so much to draw from, as you said, Tom. They took the good stuff, put it into the movie, and to make it accessible for folks who didn't read the comics. Although I did enjoy seeing Kelly Sue DeConnick, real quick cameo.
Yeah, she's in the train station.
She's in the train station.
Yeah, because Kelly Sue DeConnick had the defining run on Captain Marvel, which a lot of this movie is based on. And that, if you want to read Captain Marvel comics with Carol Danvers, it's the Kelly Sue DeConnick written books you really want to go for.
Speaking of the comics, John, were there any Captain Marvel toys produced?
There were, and I can't find any in my collection, which is probably also bad. But there was a Marvel Legends line, which was half comic, half movie. It didn't include a lot of characters. It included Carol Danvers both in the leather jacket and without the leather jacket. There was, I believe, a Target exclusive where she was lit up. She was in translucent orange to show that she was in her powerful mode. There were a couple of the Kree soldiers. There was a Talos. And then the others were like Iron Man villains. And the Build-A-Figure was actually a Jack Kirby Kree robot from the Fantastic Four. So it was one of those where I think they went into it thinking it wasn't going to be that big. We talked about this with Ant-Man. Like, they didn't even bother filling up the whole series with the movie. But then once the movie really took off, those figures disappeared.
That's surprising, because I thought with all of the Kree Star Force, they would have tried to do like all those characters were just so individualized that it seemed like they were made for action figures.
I know they did Yonrog. They did the Jude Law, but he was wearing a helmet, so they didn't even do his likeness. And then they did the female Kree, the one that hated her.
Gemma Chan's character, yeah.
Yeah, she was another exclusive. And they also did Captain Marvel in the green outfit. So it was a repaint of that one. But I also remember this movie came out in February. So even though Black Panther also came out in February and made $1 billion, February is not the blockbuster season. These were both Ant-Man and the Wasp was later summer, and then this was February. They thought these would be the smaller films to tide us over until Endgame, which when we get into Endgame is true in a storytelling sense. But this movie did much better than they thought it was going to.
Speaking of Carol Danvers in the leather jacket, I forgot to mention that scene when she shows up. She stole the biker guy's outfit. She's wearing the 9 Inch Nails T-shirt with the biker jacket over it. And she walks into the bar. I was like, "Oh my God, I've been dumped by her." She reminded me of a gal I used to date. I'm like, God damn it!
You know what? You shouldn't focus on being dumped by her. You should be proud that you got to go out with her.
That is true. I have to say it was great while it lasted, but again, she could do better. Anyway, all right. We're climbing up on the hour and a half mark, so this is where we get into our closing thoughts. Anything that we did not get a chance to go into, any observations, any things about Captain Marvel that we wanted to share before we draw this to a close. Dave, you've been really quiet, so I'm going to let you go first.
This is again, not one of my favorites, but one I enjoy. When I do my next inevitable Marvel rewatch, whether it's a year from now, a couple of years from now, I'll look forward to seeing this one again. I think she's an interesting character. And I thought it was kind of cool how they filled in some of the holes and gaps from previous films, from previous stories in the storylines in the MCU, to kind of inform what was going to happen next. Tom mentioned a great point about the chemistry between Brie Larson and Samuel Jackson, and it's kind of cool seeing him with a full head of hair too,
and not a wig to make it look like an afro. Yeah. Tom,
I would take a minute to kind of talk about this movie looks really good too, as far as the camera work, the early CGI shots of Hala are nicely layered and constructed, but they do that great like Star Wars thing of like, oh, you're on a train, you're on a subway train. So, showing a kind of the grimier side of a big city in space is, I'm always a sucker for that. That's always great. Seeing 90s LA, a lot of the footage was very LA. I felt like knowing Marvel, they probably shot that in Atlanta, but it seemed very LA to me when I was watching that. So I enjoyed that. I think the way that the movie looks is terrific. Even some of the interior spaceship scenes are really good too, in terms of getting the lighting and then getting the effect and using her powers. The climax because Captain Marvel is so overpowered. She's basically like Superman level of overpowered. And the way they built it up of like, she's got the restrictor plate and adding to it a little bit, and then she's, blasting through starships at the very end. And it's not, John, you had, what was the one line a few weeks ago from somebody feed Phil? The drawings are fighting again.
Yeah. Phil Rosenthal, who created Everybody Loves Raymond, had a quote on a podcast that's always stuck with me. When everyone was talking about Black Panther, he's like, I liked it, but at the end you're like, oh no, the drawings are fighting.
Yeah, this didn't feel like that to me. It felt more, I don't know, but it felt much more real or authentic, given how cosmic it was. So, hats off to the animators and the cinematographers and everyone who worked on that, and whoever's idea it was to put Elastica in this on the soundtrack. Also, hats off to that decision as well.
This movie is going to be one of the last of the Marvel films that does not suffer from CGI, or I'm sorry, CGI studio burnout. Like as you guys say, Endgame will be the last one. Then after that, you're going to start seeing the quality degrade.
Is that an issue with No Way Home? I remember that looking pretty good.
I think No Way Home looks really good, but we've been reading a lot of reports on how worn out and underpaid the effects houses are. How Marvel has made these massive changes because they're constantly rewriting the stories and going like, yeah, this character is this character, and not pushing back the deadline, not adding to the budget. And it's a major point in the effects houses talking about unionization.
You'll definitely see it in Multiverse of Madness. I know that. Yeah. John?
I'm more grateful for this conversation because, as I said, this was a movie that going into it, even today, and I've seen it a couple of times, I was like, okay, this is an important character to have in the MCU, but is this an important movie to watch? And I think, especially talking to you, Julie, it's been really eye-opening as much as like, I don't think I'm allowed to just dismiss and go, not for me. I think there is a lot in this, and I am somebody that embraces the MCU, and I think I was able to. I think my next viewing of this will be a lot more open than my last viewing of it. The one thing I'll mention is this Stan Lee cameo. This is the second to last Stan Lee cameo. Stan Lee had already passed away, I believe, at this point, but he had banked a few. Endgame will be the final one, but this is the most Stan Lee cameo because it's literally Stan Lee in the 90s reading his part to Mallrats in LA. And he is at the point now where he said in interviews he couldn't even see the Marvel movies in the screenings anymore. Like his eyesight had gone to that point. But he just looks up and smiles, and you're like, you're kind of getting ready to say goodbye. So it's a nice little moment. It's almost like not only do we get Stan Lee, but this time he's not a watcher. He's not a FedEx the delivery guy. He's Stan.
And you will see that when you look at the Marvel logo in the beginning, when they normally show all the different heroes, and this one was just every Stan Lee cameo in the Marvel logo at the very beginning.
Yeah, this comes right after a franchise we don't talk about. This comes right after Into the Spider-Verse, which I think is maybe the most touching Stan Lee dialogue.
Yeah. And Julie.
I was going to bring up the cameo because I do love it. And I love the look that Brie Larson gives him back, which is just sort of acknowledging everything he's given. I just thought it's really cool. One of the things we didn't talk about quickly was how Carol Veers does not get along with the other woman in the Kree group that she's fighting with, which I think is something else that women acknowledge and have experience with, that when you are the only two women there, oftentimes those women don't get along because you are in competition with each other, because they're going to pick one woman, to be on the show or be on the air or be whatever. And so we both want to be that woman. So I thought the acknowledgement of that was cool. And one of the few, not just Marvel movies or superhero movies, but movies in general that passes the Bechdel test. You've got women in this movie talking to each other all the time, and it has nothing to do with men. The men in the story are almost incidental in a way. It's Maria and it's Marvel and it's Carol throughout the whole thing. So, I mean, to me, that is what drove so much of the backlash, that you don't really need the men in this movie. Like the three of them could have figured out. I mean, you need Nick Fury, I guess, but it's really the three of them driving the story. And I think that is why so many men were so upset by it.
Dudes have got to like my favorite. It's one of my favorite lines from Ted Lasso when Ted tells Dunster's character Jamie that when him and Roy are having a problem, he goes, "You two need to get together and woman up." And he goes, "Don't you mean man up?" He goes, "No, you guys have been manning up this whole time and it hasn't worked. You got to woman up." So.
That reminds me, I've been watching History of the World Part 2 on Hulu, which it's uneven. It's up and down, but there's a scene where where the church gathers together in like 400 BC, and they decide in a committee meeting that Jesus is going to be white. He's going to be ripped. And Jillian Bell is like moderating. And at the end, she goes, yeah, I'm glad you're happy. It's really good when it works out for white men in power. And then cut to Ken Marino goes, yeah, you know, it really does. And that's the backlash against Captain Marvel. It's like white guys have been given 20 of these movies, and to be upset about this one is just selfishness beyond reproach.
Yeah, there's one woman in Star Wars. There's one woman in Star Wars, and guys didn't complain.
Be the sister of one of the men, so she can be with the other one of the men.
Yeah, but I gotta say, as a little girl, seeing a woman who was not only like with the boys, but was kicking their asses and giving them orders was amazing.
Which is,
I always wonder if she would have been the same character if she wasn't Carrie Fisher, because that was like Carrie Fisher every day of her life.
No, that's not even a question. You need Carrie Fisher's specific combination of acting chops and absence of fucks in order to get that.
And this is a time when little girls are still being told, don't be bossy, don't be a know-it-all. Boys don't like girls who are smarter than they are. Don't be pushy, don't interrupt. And she did all of that, and she was a princess on top of it. It was amazing.
You're coming back, right, Julie?
Anytime.
All right, because I think you have a lot more you want to say. But you've been so kind. I don't want to monopolize your time, and I know it's getting late. So before we all go, let's go around the horn and say what our socials are. What are we up to next, and where can people find us? Julie, lead us off.
I am at Julie DiCaro across the board. So whether it's Snapchat or TikTok or Instagram or Twitter or Facebook. I am currently interim EIC over at Deadspin. I'm trying to sell a second book, and I'm watching a lot of TV. Just finished The Last of Us last night. Trying to get back into reading again because I've been watching way too much TV.
Anything? Okay, I know. Of course, we want to read Sideline. Anything else you're reading right now you'd like to recommend?
God, I just finished a book, and I can't even remember what it was. So no.
Okay. We will not mention that author's name or book.
Recommendations.
Yeah. Tom.
Well, you can find the Hyperspace Pilot and all the cocktails from this show, as well as multiple classic and tiki cocktails that I might like to make in my own time at REVU Cocktails on the Instagram app.
Dave.
I am on Instagram at Pinto_noir. And I have absolutely nothing new going on. So
but why do we like following you?
Post lots of cute photos of animals, usually mostly my dog Dexter, my little goblin, and then sometimes my Siamese cat.
And every once in a while, you'll get to see Dave and I working on a puppy transport.
Yes,
that one's
a little more once in a while.
That's my version of a thirst trap. Thirsty puppies. John.
If you are not listening to this through audio, if you're watching this now, you can listen to this through audio at the Caffeinated Comics podcast. We run all the episodes of Top Men and all the episodes of MCU ReVU as an audio-only podcast on the Radio Misfits Podcast Network. But in the weeks in between, since we don't do this every week, we cover all the news that's fit to geek, and we do some interviews. We've had some great ones. Julie, this won't excite you, but we talked to Doug Drexler last week, who has been doing special effects works from makeup to concept design on Star Trek since Next Generation, and he's on Picard now. And the guy has more stories than Stan Lee, and has stories about Stan Lee. Elliot and I interviewed him together, and we just had to remind him of what he was talking about.
True.
I'm particularly proud of that one. So that was last week's. If you're watching this live, and Elliot has promised to put up the video of that podcast on YouTube.
Yes, that will be going out shortly once I stitch together an intro. And you can follow me on all the socials at Elliot Serrano with 2 L's, 2 T's, and 2 R's. Of course, please, by all means, if you're seeing us on the Facebook page, YouTube, or Twitch TV, please give us a like, give us a follow, give us a thumbs up, share a video if you can. Check out the Caffeinated Comics podcast on the Radio Misfits Podcast Network. We would really like to get our metrics up. The more eyes that watch this, the more followers and subscribers that we have, the more great guests we can book. And thank you, Susan. Thank you, Lehman. Thank you for everyone who's been watching on the live stream on the Facebook and YouTube pages. Tremendous thank you to Julie DiCaro for joining us this evening. Again, Julie, I love you. You know, we've known each other for a really long time. It was great seeing you, even if it was just on the screen for now. I can't wait to have you back.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. It was great seeing you too.
Great. All right. Good night, everyone. We'll see you next time when we will be discussing Avengers Endgame. And the question is, will Elliot cry? Odds are yes. Good night, everyone.